Hello, welcome everyone to today's podcast, The Engineer Whisperer. I'm super excited to be here. And today I have something super special for you. I am doing a podcast, a four-part podcast with my super awesome friend Mike. Before I bring him in, let me just tell you about what we're doing. So he wrote an amazing book. Here it is. Leadership for Engineers. And I read it and it's so cool. I said, Mike, you need to come here. Let's talk about your book. I want a lot of people to know about it. So this is what we're doing today. We're going to help you become better leaders as engineers. And today we are going to do part one. And part one is about leaning from engineer to manager. Why engineers? And what are some fundamental principles for you to have a successful transition into that role? In episode two, we're going to talk about some often missed tools for leadership for the STEM professionals. In episode three, we're going to talk about fun with people. I think that will be one of my fun episodes. We're going to talk about people and the art of managing humans versus technology. And then we're going to close with episode four, which is about surviving and thriving as a person, as a leader. So that's going to be a fun one too. So tune in, stay with us. Episode one starts right now. So Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks. It's an honor to be here, Andrew.
Well, before we start, tell us a little bit about you, give us some background, and then why you wrote the book.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and went to UW Milwaukee, University of Wisconsin Milwaukee. Got my engineering degree. Had grand plans of being an engineer the rest of my life. And throughout my journey, and I'll touch on a little more detail here shortly, but throughout my journey, I rolled into executive management over several decades. It doesn't happen overnight. And during that journey, it dawned on me that there's a lot of things that both academia and the workplace do not prepare your typical engineer for, that don't craft a curriculum, if you will, for the folks that are in the engineering department, how they're going to go move into a role of leadership. And I took good notes along the way. I built a little bit of an educational platform that I shared with people I work with. And then I semi-retired a handful of years ago and decided to turn that into something that I could pay forward. That if I crafted a document that I will be able to share with engineers young and old that are moving from the technology individual contributor part to a role of leading others, this might help them keep from stubbing their toe periodically. But I'll tell you what, maybe the best thing to do right now would be share with you a little bit about what I did for a living and um, what drove me to do this. So I had a couple of jobs in my career, but over 3 decades I spent in the supply chain field. I worked for a company, HK Systems, which later became Dematic, that was responsible for automation and technology in supply chain. So conveyors, robots, software. This is a giant million-square-foot warehouse we put together. And my role changed throughout my career. This was the kind of work we did, and I'm very proud of it. Had a lot of fun doing it. Started off engineering, and then things went to heck in a handbasket, which I'll touch on right now. My plan when I got out of college, the smart grad that I was, graduated with honors. I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to get patents. It's going to be really cool. So my plan was I'm just going to engineer until I'm old. And that didn't go so well. As it turns out, I did engineer. I kind of broke my career down into what I'll call 3 trimesters, if you will. The first one, I did a lot of engineering. I got rolled into project management. I think because I was probably the only engineer that had a sport coat, they pulled me into sales role periodically. But I was doing execution. I was still on the engineering side and the technology side. Then the second trimester, if you will, I got into more leadership, and it didn't all happen overnight. This was kind of feathered in, but I started a customer service department. I actually had salespeople working for me. One of our factories reported to me in manufacturing, and Engineers were now in my organization. The latter part of my career, we started buying companies. So I got involved in the M&A capacity, the marketing department of all things. You wouldn't think about an engineer running marketing, but I did. I gave up the plant responsibility and had more and more engineers and project managers working for me. It was a great run, but I don't share this with you to brag about the cool stuff I did, but I want to bring up two things. One, don't ever say never, because you never know what your responsibilities are going to be. Mine changed from execution to management without me really planning it for that way.
Yep.
It turned out great. The other thing I want to share is sometimes things go away. For instance, as you get with bigger companies, you can't wear 10 hats, you can wear three. So you can see there were things that drifted in and out of my responsibility.
Yes.
This podcast is about that point in time when you make that shift. And that's what the book's about. That's what we're going to talk about over these 4 episodes is that change from
Yes.
um, moving from a individual contributor to one who leads others.
Yeah, that critical pivoting point. I call it in my work. So yeah, super. So this podcast is about that, but what about the book?
Right, right. So as I went through this, there were so many things I didn't know, things about finance, things about how to manage other people. So I literally started as an engineer might, I started creating a log of that which I didn't know and some tips to myself, and then I shared them with other engineers, and I became a little bit of a resource in the organization. At the end of it all, I put together this document, this book. It's available on Amazon. All the proceeds go to the college I went to, so it's not going to change my lifestyle. It's meant to be a paying forward sort of thing. And in there's 33 small chapters. Each one is about a skill or a quality or a piece of data that you probably didn't learn in engineering, that you probably will find valuable in leadership, things from finance to building a business plan to time management to managing your ego, and all the little things are short. I think they're funny. Not everyone does. But you can find it on Amazon, and this is kind of my way of saying thanks to the industry.
I think it's funny. Let me second that. It's super funny. Very fun read. Um, I really enjoyed it. All right, so for you, you put for your path and your success, you made the notes and you now put them in the book. So why is this a thing? What's up with engineers? I thought they're smart and they're capable of, moving from an engineer to leadership.
No question. I can't argue with you personally that engineers are smart. I think they really are smart. I also think they have qualities, built-in qualities that are the perfect foundation for leadership. I'll talk in a little while maybe about why they have struggles getting into management and leadership. But some characteristics of engineers, besides being smart, is that they're organized. They're methodical, sequential thinkers. They're very inquisitive, which is priceless, rather than just being full of yourself and confident in yourself, is to
Yeah.
ask questions. They're good at that. They're often apolitical, and I don't mean that in the Democrat versus Republican sense, but they're objective. They look at things objectively, and they're unselfish and make practical decisions. Pragmatic. Pragmatism means the utility of a concept lies, or the value of a concept lies in its utility. So
Yep.
engineers are pragmatic. They're super resourceful, detail oriented. They dig and dig. They come up with solutions. They don't quit till they've got an answer. And lastly, and I think most importantly, having met a lot of abrasive leaders that are out there, engineers are nice. They're typically not psychopathic narcissists. They tend to be uh, well-meaning, good folk. I'm sure everybody
Hmm.
listening to your podcast is, and yourself included. Uh, so those are some of the foundational characteristics that I believe make them good candidates for leadership. Not everyone should be. I will punctuate this by saying a couple of those things go away later, and they probably should go away. For instance, their objectivity and their self-awareness and being unselfish, it's pretty combative at the top, and you better have some thick skin and brass knuckles, or you're going to get eaten alive. So you need to have a little bit of that strength in you likely, or additionally, you shouldn't give up your niceness. There's some very nice, positive leaders in the world, particularly when they get on to executive management. But don't be afraid to push back. Don't be afraid to defend yourself because there are some pretty sharp elbows in leadership.
Yeah, yes, I like how you're putting that. So I think that folks who are listening are thinking, yeah, I'm a typical engineer with these qualities, and I consider myself nice and everything else. So I'm thinking maybe they're thinking about this move into leadership. So what do you suggest they watch out for as they get on this road ahead?
Yeah, there's some historical roadblocks. I'll put them in an arbor press here for you to show you how they could squish you. Uh, Unfortunately, some of the things they're up against as they think they want to move into a leadership role is there's biases. Engineers are wonky, geeky, uh, long-haired people that sit in cubicles and come up with solutions. They typically have low visibility. They're often several levels down from the folks that go to the decision-making meetings, so they don't get a lot of press, if you will. They back to the niceness and the self-esteem, low self-promotion. Typically, engineers are not braggers or out there waving their flag saying, "Here's how wonderful I am, and here's the great things I can do for the company." uh, Good and bad, they are often valuable as is. So if Andrea's in the lab working on the cure for cancer, now is not the time to maybe put her through a leadership program, right? We want her to finish that work and do that work. So sometimes they're their own worst enemy because they're good at what they do. And the last one, and this is a big one, it was a huge one for me, is the lack of business acumen. There's often not a lot of accounting or finance or business roles, M&A. Those are the kind of things that are left out of the curriculum for an engineer, both in academia and in the workplace. So these aren't showstoppers. They're just things to be aware of.
Well, I know you're going to share a few of these fundamental principles with us, but just, given your experience, what would you say is the greatest challenge for the individual contributors and engineers as they shift into leadership positions? What hurts the most?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's an excellent question. I think if we can just maybe look at it in terms of what's good and not so good, maybe in terms of the typical engineer. One of the good things about moving into leadership is you get to watch others advance in life because of your involvement. And once you realize and I'm going to talk about this more in the future here, it's not that which you do, it's that which the people that report to you do, and that brings you your joy. So you got to make that transition. It's glorious when that happens. It's a lucrative role. Your compensation typically can get pretty healthy over time. You've got a better impact. You have more visibility and more exposure to decision makers, so you can make a bigger impact on the organization. More autonomy. Fewer people are going to check your math and second guess you when you're in leadership. You have accountability that's built in, but there's not someone hovering over your desk making sure you don't goof up. And rather than being task oriented and going a very linear role, you're going to be exposed to a lot of people, a lot of situations that are really going to help you grow. And I've met phenomenal amount of people that have added to my world. I always, as I say in the book, I always say, learn something from everybody you meet, and you're going to meet some pretty spectacular individuals and situations. But it's not without its challenges. Back to your question, uh, there's going to be illogical decisions and behaviors due to the office politics, people trying to outdo you or vie for a particular position. There's going to be things that happen due to power struggles. Makes no sense to the engineer whatsoever. It's going to happen. Another challenge, or I'll say caution, is the higher you are in the food chain, the tougher it is to look for a job when you need one. If you're a civil engineer who does drawings for highways, you can probably find a job this week. If you're the EVP of digital transformation, you're going to struggle, right? You don't want to be overqualified, and you're going to have a harder time because there's not that many roles out there.
Yes.
if you do goof up, the problems, or the people under you do, the results can be much more far reaching than I screwed up a formula, or I didn't read a strain gauge correctly. One thing that I had a hard time with, because I'm a bit of a people pleaser, is that not everyone's going to like you. If you're going to be in that role, you're going to have people working for you that might not love you, and that's okay. Or people that are your peers that don't get a kick out of you. That can be tough for some folks to digest. And lastly, but very important, you got to figure out how to manage stress, because there's plenty of opportunities for it to, like I say here, eat you like a can of Pringles. You need to build a defense mechanism to work through stress and get through that. Uh, I'll put one more graphic on that point to make it a little bit finer point. And I'm not trying to terrify people here, but any success in the world, whether you own a tavern or you want to run a dry cleaner or you want to be a leader in an engineering department, it takes sacrifice. Unless you're a, trust fund baby, you want to be successful, you're probably going to have to give something up. And this is kind of a general graphic of my life where the things I used to really enjoy, family, friends, hobbies, and interests, those tend to shrink over time. In the book, I talk about it gets better later, but as you grow to the peak of your involvement, you're going
Yeah.
to be giving things up, and you're going to be doing more leading others and making some sacrifices.
I love how the leading others goes grows really fast, exponentially grows compared to the other boxes in this chart on this
Yeah,
chart.
yep.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I like about you. Mike, you say it as it is. I mean, what you just said, it's some engineers, some individual contributors might say this is tough. I mean, I might just have to give up everything that I know about who I am as an engineer and then bring in this variable of leading others. So yeah, I mean that can be a scary thing for engineers. But let's assume that they want to go and do this transition and they say yes to transitioning into leadership. What do you suggest that they do first in order to become an effective leader?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that folks should quickly become familiar with and be aware of and build a mechanism around. And the first one is, because that was a really good question. Okay, I'm in the driver's seat. I'm thinking of doing this. What do I do? You don't go here if A, you're not willing to make those sacrifices we talked about, but also be crystal clear that the job at hand is going to change. Let's say I'm a computer programmer. I get a budget, a schedule, a timeline, and I have to write a new app for a cell phone or something. I do design code, I integrate the software, I test it, I deploy it, I complete, it goes to market, and then I start over again. Nice linear progression, step by step, lockstep components, and it was all done thoughtfully. When you're in the management ranks, it gets a lot lumpier than that. You're given soft goals, or at least uh, imprecise goals, like we'd like you to uh, develop a strategy for a market in Europe. And here's the team, and do it as quickly as you can with a general budget. And those kind of tasks, you have hope, you have challenges. Maybe something goes really well, then things go poorly, then things work against you that shouldn't. There's personal dramas. Hopefully, at the end, you find success, but it's non-linear. It's in engineering terms, it's not laminar flow, it's turbulent flow, and that's one you got to be prepared for and be aware of. Um, the other one I'll talk about is, and I touched on it briefly early, that which you use to define your own success is going to change wildly. Back to that civil engineer I mentioned, if you're cranking out drawings and putting your PE stamp on them and helping some engineering firm build highways or mechanical equipment, your success and your value to the organization is what you do personally and what you accomplish and what you produce. When you transition into leadership, it's it should have almost nothing to do with what you do. It's what those under you, and I use that term poorly, but those
Yes.
that are in your team do. So your goal is to maximize their productivity, their accuracy, their uh, timeliness. And it's kind of the integral of the curve rather than the curve that defines your success. Sometimes it won't be acknowledged as much as I turned out 6 programs or 6 drawings or 6 new products this year. That's okay, as
Yep.
long as you get joy from the people that I work with have advanced because of me. That it's the integral of your progress.
Yeah, I said that it's that mindset shift that right now the rewards are going to come in different ways, and your success is gonna reflect in the successes of the people that you're leading. Yes, I mean that's a big one.
Amen.
And as people are progressing, I'm just thinking that, okay, so I'm an individual contributor, an engineer. I signed up, or maybe I got tapped. Okay, Joe, you're a really great engineer. Why don't you just come and become a manager? Um, so Mike, what's something that the engineers can then really focus on their journey?
Well, one of the first things you need to do after if you get through those hurdles I just talked about and hypnotize yourself to believe that it's about your team and it's going to be lumpy and it's going to be turbulent, not laminar. One of the first things you can do and when you embark on it is uh, think about where you want to go. Kind of work backwards from the answer. And I'm gonna use an engineering analogy here, if there's any electrical engineers in the audience. But when you're controlling a motor using a control system, you have set points or desired rotation, if you will, the speed, acceleration that you pump into a controller of sorts. It turns on a drive which rotates a motor, and then an encoder gives you the feedback to the controller as to what's actually happening out there in the field compared to the set points you had. So, in leadership terms, establishing your set points are what qualities and people do I want to emulate? Not that I want to be just like, Barack Obama or Elvis Presley. But what are the things I admire and find valuable that I want to build into my personal persona, my leadership persona? Then you got to have an encoder that says, I'm either doing it or not doing it. And your personal judgment of your performance probably isn't a great encoder. I would use mentors, I would use peers, I would use
Yes.
360 analysis that HR folks put together and say, how am I doing compared to what I want to do? And then lastly, and most importantly, adjust those parameters over time. When you're dialing in the set points and dialing in the XL decel schedule in that controller, you got to monitor it over time to say, okay, I wanted to be X, I accomplished X, but there was some fallout. And let me give you an example of that. And what I mean it by the continuous process, not an event. Back to my awkward analogy of a motor controller. Let's say my set point is I want to be regarded as a high performing, results oriented leader like Elon Musk without the drugs. I want to be somebody who's really, they can count on me to overperform every time. So I'm going to set super high goals for my team. If I'm supposed to develop a new product introduction in 6 months, I'm going to tell the team it's 4, and I'm going to get it done ahead of time. And then, holy cow, we exceed our goals, we exceed our delivery times, everything's rocking, we're doing great. But then when you look at the feedback, the results from your encoder, holy cow, 20% of my engineers are resigning every month because I got them working on Sundays. I'm not being very nice to them. I'm holding the bar too high.
Yeah.
At that point, okay, I got to tap the brakes and focus on employee engagement. How can I get the team to perform well with a reasonable amount of accountability and give them some joy in their careers? So it's a horse analogy, if you will, but you get the point. Where, particularly as you're growing into your role and learning things as a leader, quickly adjust so you don't continue to use your own self-confidence to make bad decisions.
I love this point, crafting your own leadership persona. I think that that is not emphasized enough as engineers move into leadership, that they have a choice to really craft who and what kind of leader they want to be. So I'm so grateful that you have it in the book, and then we're talking about it right now, kind of like shining the light on it, because I think this is so important. What kind of leader do I want to be? It's a question that I hope who's listening and watching can answer, because that then I know you have put some time and effort into finding the answers, and those who maybe are struggling with answering, maybe this is an inspiration to spend some time, find out. It's never too late for you to decide what kind of leader you want to be. So again, Mike, thanks for sharing. And I, of course, I always love your visuals. Um, all right. Well, let's say that you convinced us that now an engineer, is ready, has the raw material, believes in him or herself, that okay, I can become a leader. And then okay, I understand there's some trade-offs. There's those pros and cons that you showed. And then okay, I have some idea of what kind of a leader I want to be. Well, how does one move up the leadership ladder? How did you do it? What's your experience? Tell us
Sure,
more.
sure. Yeah, I mean, it's not just a matter of raising your hand, but it kind of is. Let me take you through some steps. Uh, One of the uh, theories I have is that there's four ways of getting into leadership, or four traditional paths, if you will. And one is you were born to lead. You are just you probably shouldn't be an engineer. You were out there. You immediately find great joy and are really good at helping others help themselves. An example would be Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover was the 31st president of the United States. He was probably a lousy engineer, but he was a great president. They named a dam after him just because he was maybe because he
Yes,
was an engineer.
that's true.
But he was born to lead, and he was the only president of the United States, by the way, that was an engineer. So that's one way where you're just it's natural for you. The second way is you thunk your way there. We've got our buddy here, Mark Zuckerberg, software engineer. Hard to find anybody more geeky than him when he started. But he had this holy cow idea, blossomed into a company. Next thing you know, he's on the cover of magazines.
Yep.
And it was his engineering that got him into leadership. So it was a product of his technical success.
Yeah.
The third way, which is an unfortunate way, this cat is Lawrence J. Peter. He invented the Peter Principle, and for those who haven't heard of it, Peter Principle means a member of a hierarchy. Members of a hierarchy are promoted until they reach the level which they are no longer competent. So there are folks that grow and grow and they get promoted. They're tremendous engineers, and yeah, we're going to make you a department manager, and they fail miserably because they just don't have the raw material. I had a guy working for me, Larry, phenomenal engineer, probably still is one of the best engineers I've ever met. We tucked a bunch of employees under him, and he hated it. They hated it. We all hated it. So we made him a staff engineer, gave him a promotion and a raise in an office. But he was just not cut out for mentoring others. A decade later, he was, but at the time of the peak of his technical prowess, he was a victim of the Peter Principle. The fourth way, which is what this podcast, the book, and you and I are all about, is being qualified and groomed. Your engineer whisperer programs and materials you generate. There's universities like Cornell and UCLA that do a pretty good job. I still
Mhm.
contend there's an absence of leadership training, but take the people that have the raw material, that have the skills and show the prowess and interest in leading, and then groom them. So that's kind of in my estimation the four ways you can get there, and the fourth one is more about how we can fill those gaps that would otherwise exist. Um, so specifically to your question, what do you do if you feel like you want to go down that road? Number one, and I would double underline it if I could, do I find great joy in humbly helping others succeed?
Mm.
If you're still all about you and your delivery and your prowess and your smartness, it's probably not a good fit. But if you just get giddy when the people that are working for you and working on your team are successful and you're just sitting in the wings, you're a pretty good candidate.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
good one. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you got to really test yourself and say, is this something I can live with and still be rewarded personally? You got to get comfortable raising your hand when opportunity knocks, and even when it doesn't. You asked me earlier, or just a few minutes ago, how did I do it? I'll be honest. I just, whenever I saw a void or an opportunity that was available for me to adopt without being told to, I did. So if we
Mm-hmm.
were in a meeting and someone says, "Yeah, let's start thinking about the 7 things we got to do tomorrow," I'd come back with a timeline and an org chart and a spreadsheet and a budget, and I would just say, "I'm doing it. No one told me to do it, but I'm going to do it." And then pretty soon they go, "Boy, this cat's really organized. He's really figured out how to look at things holistically." Share your aspirations, whether it's with human resources or your boss or others, and say, I got an inkling I'd like to be involved in a leadership position. The next one's pretty important, and that's what the 33 chapters are about, is take inventory and close the gaps. If you don't know anything about public speaking, figure it out.
Yep.
Go take, if you don't know anything about um, mentoring, or if you don't know anything about building a business plan, you're not going to get everything you need to know in a 6-page chapter, but take a class. I took tons of a la carte classes on time management, stress management, computers, all the stuff and finances, the things that were gaps in my report card, and slowly started filling out my portfolio. And really valuable is a mentor or two. Find people that are like-minded in terms of your values and your aspirations that you admire and you build into your persona. But then you got to be okay when they say things you don't like. So you bring mentors in to tell you when you're doing well and when you're not doing well. That second one can hurt a little bit. So that's my answer to your question is these are the kind of things that'll help you make that step and quote raise your hand.
Yeah. Well, I love the examples. I love the list. I mean, yeah, if someone goes through this list and then and like starts doing what's on the list, their way. I'm always encouraging folks to, personalize it. You know what your strengths are and what not, call it weaknesses. But you know what you like to do, and where your heart just starts pumping when you're like, yeah, I'm excited about it. So, go do those things that you're excited about first, and then figure out how you can get excited about some of the things that you're not excited about yet. That's that taking inventory and closing the gap. So yes, that is I believe in these as well as igniting a transition. Now, what about some of the leadership fundamentals that you observe that people are, well, engineers kind of like they just don't get it. They are misunderstanding. Are they
Yeah,
any
I
of
mean,
those?
yeah, in the beginning of this episode, you said we're going to talk mostly in this episode about making that first step into leadership and making the transition. And there's a couple of things we talked about, a few areas that could use some help or guidance in terms of tools. There'll be more tools later,
Hmm.
but there's a couple of things that are what I'll call misunderstandings. Um, for example, I often hear young engineers or engineers new to leadership ask me, "Wow, should I be strategic or tactical?" Well, it's not a choice. It's a continuum. There's elements in what I did every day when I was an exec. I had, I don't know, 800 people reporting to me, and every day I was tactical in some areas and wildly strategic in others.
Yes.
Certainly, where you are in the organization and in the hierarchy of the organization will dictate which you gravitate more towards. But it's not a choice. Leaders love to talk about how I'm so strategic. I'm a strategic leader, god darn it. Well, it sounds good, but eventually someone's got to go do something. That's why my LLC is called Tactical Leadership, because being strategic looks good on a resume and sounds good when you're talking to people about your position. But for example, when I look at a typical organization, owners of the organization, the board of directors, the C-suite, more on the strategic side, management and mid-management, you got to understand the strategy, but you also have to be able to execute.
Yeah.
The professionals, the engineers, the supervisors, the workforce, they're more about getting her done, right? So
Yeah.
let's take an example where the owners, let's say it's a privately held company owned by two brothers, it's a manufacturing company, and they want to get out of the business. So the board of directors says, well, the first thing we got to do is make the company more valuable before we sell it. So we have to enhance the valuation of the company. The C-suite then is chartered with going out and looking for competitors to buy to roll up into the company, make it more valuable. So when the owners do sell it, they'll get more money. Management in those acquisitions have to define synergies. If I buy these three companies, how can I combine all of them to be more successful than the sum of them? Mid management, they got to go out and make it happen. They have to integrate these things, do rationalization of products, rationalization of resources, save money where they have to. The professionals, the engineers, they got to rationalize best practices and figure out what are we going to save and not save from each company. Supervisors got to make sure that this new expanded workforce is optimized, that it's the right size, that we keep the best people. And then the folks that are actually doing the work have to improve the value. They need to maintain the reputation and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's the activities that would take place in my example from strategic to tactical. And then if all that stuff happens, then you can sell the company at an enhanced value. So it's the tactical work that fulfills the dream of the strategic vision. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love the visual.
All right. So just to kind of repeat myself, the strategist has broad reach. They enjoy visualizing. They're more abstract. They think about long term. Where the tactical folks are super focused. They got to show me the results, tangible things, more detailed, more short term and immediate results. Uh, but almost no one lives on the ends. It's usually a blend.
That's true. Yes. It's a little bit that space of be comfortable to be uncomfortable. There's gonna be moments when you're comfortable. Maybe you like, I don't know, visualization, but then you have to be able to explain the tactical, the seeing part. So yes, I can see that, and I'm a big promoter in working with my engineering clients to not choose either or, but to, as you said, yes and yes, to have the
Right.
third option where you can be both, and then you can move from one to move into, or live on the border of, but definitely understanding that it is a continuum, it is a movement. You're not just stuck in one of them just because you got promoted and as you
Mhm.
climb the ladder. So, don't get yourself stuck in your own mindset. I think that's one of the messages you're saying,
Right.
because you can't blame anybody else than yourself that you got stuck and then your leadership got stuck. So yes, understand that there's this continuum, and then just be aware of where you are, what's important in your day-to-day work and decision making. And again, as you mentioned earlier, if there are gaps, if there's something that you're not good at or not good at yet, then fill the gap, find someone to teach you, find information about it. Because as individual contributors, I can see someone saying, well, I've never really thought about strategies or put together a strategy, or like, I'm not good at it. That typical I'm not good at it response. And that's okay, you're not good at it yet, but your opportunity when you step into leadership is to learn, is to broaden your knowledge. And I think it's a lot of fun to gain this experience.
Well, well said, my friend. And when you look at particularly, there's the tools that are gaps, like like I said, public speaking, time management, those kind of things. But this misunderstanding that I mentioned is particularly strong when you're an engineer, because if you look at this particular slide, let's face it, engineers skew to the right side, right?
Hmm.
They want a mission, they want something to do.
Yes.
So this is certainly one of the primary misconceptions of people making the transition. Another one is about strength. Besides being strategic or tactical,
Yes.
should I be a strong leader? I want to be a strong leader so people can say,
Yes.
"Oh, I'm strong." Um, and to me, strength is your measure of strength is a result of your attitude and your behavior. So
Yeah.
attitude and this can be on a playground, this can be in a boardroom. You can range anywhere from fatalistic, doom and gloom, all the way to delusionally optimistic in your attitude. Behaviorally, what you do, what you're perceived to be and do in the world, you can be shown as feeble, where you're just cowering and scared and really not aggressive, to extremely powerful and domineering and
Yeah.
I'll go as far as to say overpowering. You got to pick your spot, right? And I'm not going to tell you where you personally belong. My objective in my career was always skew optimistic, not delusional, but be positive, uh, be a positive force, whether it's in a room or on a team or on a project or in an organization, and then come across as darn near unshakable. Where when things are really tough, I tried to double down my strength and my optimism and my um, conviction that we can overcome whatever challenge is ahead of us. A little bit later, I'm going to talk about how my career was up and down, up and down, up and down because of things outside my control. That's the time to bring up that strength in behavior. So that my personal advice and my goal was to do things akin to this slide here. Um,
Mm.
and you might say, well, why be optimistic? You want to be, particularly project managers, love contingency, love thinking about what could go wrong. You
Yeah.
have to. And sometimes things are really going to hit the fan and you got to be square about it. When you're faced with the unknown, if you really don't know, there's no reason not to be optimistic. Don't lie about it, but say, I don't know if it's going to rain today, or in a month. I don't know if it's going to rain, but I'm gonna hope it doesn't. Attitude is contagious. If your team
Yeah.
sees you're terrified, if your team sees you as being nervous, they're gonna get nervous, and you don't need that. Your job as a leader is to, within reason, buffer them from the unknown. You might be churning on the inside, but it's not worth getting everybody else worked up about it. You need to ask yourself, is the issue at hand, that if there's something bugging you as a leader, is it personal dash professional, or professional? If it's personal, you got to bury it. I always use the analogy when there's a disc jockey on the radio and they have a horrible thing in their life, like, their dog died that morning. They still got to be funny on the radio, right? So you can't let personal things, I shouldn't say you can't. You shouldn't let personal things leak into your leadership. You should come in with the persona that I got this. If they're personal professional, you got to bury it. What I call this is a low pass filter for those electrical engineers online today, where you let leak through the things that are truly professional, and you got to be square with the folks that are around you as to the situation at hand. But if it's personal, there's no sense not being optimistic.
Well, I mean, I see the point in if you died and you're on the radio, you still have to be funny. But then, some folks might say, and I'm gonna give them the voice, like, okay, but what's the potential danger with this whole optimism, Mike?
And there is, and I appreciate you telling me that or asking me that. And back to my little speedometer before, stop short of delusional, where you're just this
Yeah.
everything is rosy when it's not. You got to be able to manage your optimism, particularly in negative times. When it's a tough situation, the adults working with you, the people around you that are professionals, they have to know about it. It would be horrible if one day you announced, yeah, for the last 6 months we've been out of money and the company's closing tomorrow.
Yeah.
That would be bad management. Um, but do be aware there's a correlation between one's level in the company and their ability to process concerning information. If you tell people on the shop floor that we've got an issue with our banks, our lenders, they might freak out and put down their tools and go find another job.
Mm.
You say that to vice presidents, they'll go, okay, what do we got to do? How are we going to fix this thing? What's the plan? And let's put together a plan to rectify our financial problems. Um, the other thing I'll say to your question about the dangers, there's going to come a time, no matter what, you're going to be flummoxed. There's a weight everyone can't lift, right? Everyone's got some weight they can't lift anymore. So make sure you develop a circle of friends, peers, mentors that you can pull together in a circle to go get a pizza, to go have a meeting, whatever it might be, and say, okay, I'm in a jam here, team. What would you do if you were in my role?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why they have teacher lounges in schools. That must be why they do that. But if you save the real hysteria for true emergencies, like the sky really is falling. We're in deep yogurt, and we gotta do something like right now.
Yeah.
Uh, then people stand up and listen. They go, "Wow, he had a pale look on his face today, or she was really showing some concern. We better perk up and listen and come up with a plan." So again, to your question, don't bury bad things. And don't be delusionally optimistic. Be open with the people that work for you. But when in doubt, try to put on a positive view and let's figure out how we're going to get through this.
A little bit what you're saying that comes to my mind is emotional intelligence, uh, kind of mixed with some critical thinking and this critical decision making. Because as you mentioned, which was very inspirational, if you tell someone on the shop floor that yeah, there we have a problem with the bank, yeah, they're just gonna probably walk out and go find a job right now because they have to feed their families and bring home the bacon. And they know that they're not in the situation to make a decision and do something about it. That's just the nature of the role that they're in. But sharing it with someone who can support you in that critical thinking and in the making of a decision is the smart way to do. So for that, you need a little bit of that emotional intelligence of, okay, well, how do I handle it? And how do I handle my emotions? And then how do I share information and how do I help others uh, with their emotions and how do I respond to their emotions? So I can see some correlation there for sure.
Yeah, well said. There's no formula. It's going to have to be game time decisions and how you behave. But yeah, well said. Emotional intelligence.
Yeah, it's a try it out, see what works, and then learn from your failures, right,
Mm.
Mike? I mean,
Right, right.
it's I'm guilty of that too, of failing and then picking yourself up. Um, all right. Well, what about this? What are some unfamiliar foundational skills that engineers are struggling with, if any?
Yeah, this is probably above the category of tools, and I think we'll talk about tools in the next episode. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the, I think, foundational things that is a prerequisite or a skill that quickly needs to be learned is decision making. You're from college on, from the grade school playground. You're going to be making decisions in life, in a marriage, whatever it might be, and it's all about compromise and discussion. In business, it's so much more far-reaching. So let's take an example where there's a leadership organization that has a question, and you're part of a team that's going to contribute to the solution or contribute to a direction that's going to come out of this particular situation. Everybody's got their own ideas. You got to go into it. Don't ever lose sight of the facts. The number one fact when you are a contributor to a group decision is the objective is to harvest the value of the entire team and come up with the optimum direction. Not for you to win, not for you to get your view heard or tromp on someone else's idea. It is this is a team sport. We're all going to throw our ideas in, and then we're going to blend them, cut them up, tear them up, and then come up with the optimum. That's the goal, and it's a little tough for people that are competitive. You can't lose sight of that. Be clear that rank has its privilege, that you may be contributing at a level, but the folks a little higher on the ladder might have some more stick and more ability to uh, uh, promote their ideas or to have greater history, which brings greater value to their ideas. And then again, that's why they call it a management team, is because we're looking at an optimum direction forward. So when you are in those situations, and this is a little academic, if you will, in terms of approach, but it's different than being an engineer, where there is a pretty clear go no go formula associated with decision making. In this case, prepare your perspective and pitch it. You're part of a team. Here's my idea. Here's the data behind my idea. If I don't have data, go get it. Be objective. Love, be passionate about what your perspective is, but don't fall in love with it because you might have to part ways later. Respectfully caucus. Don't make it personal. Don't ever make it personal, and make sure you are find overlaps and say some positive things and find the positive in other perspectives. And then this is so important that, and this is the toughest part, when a ultimate decision has been made, whether it's a direction or a decision or whatever it might be, you got to salute the flag. You got to say, you might have said we're
Yeah.
going south, and the end result was we're going northeast. We're going northeast, and you got to be behind it. You're part of a team.
Yeah.
You got to put aside your personal old perspectives and say we're going north. And then finally, you got to communicate down that direction with passion and belief. If you do it resentfully, there's ways of communicating to your team what the
Mm-hmm.
decision was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Doggone it, those guys made this wrong decision.
Yeah.
No, you're part of a team, and your team made this call. I'm going deep on a pretty narrow topic here, but I can't emphasize enough how important the skill, the foundational skill of team decision making is in leadership compared to the things we're familiar with in engineering. My perspective is don't be crazy about it, but once a team makes a decision, willingly and largely enthusiastically convey that to the organization with no bitterness and say, this is what my team of associates came up with.
Yeah. Wow. I heard a few things that and I want to add to. One of them is that your previous slide is you want your voice to be heard. So, step up and you have a seat at the table, use it. Believe in your voice and what you have to say. And then I love this concept of love it, but don't fall in love with it. Um, I think, yeah, that's something hard for individual contributor engineers. And then to do what's right for the team, and then to be a team player. And as a leader, to stand by the decision of your team, to support. I mean, that is one of the ways that you support your own team, representing the decision up high as you promote it to your leadership. So yeah, I love all this, Mike, and I understand that this is a topic we can probably have another podcast on. So,
Probably.
folks, just take a minute, even if you're like, okay, this is too much. Um, and just take a minute, see what you get out of it right now, and maybe just come back and listen to it again and see what new awareness you gain as you are also comparing it to your own experiences as a leader. Wow. Well, Mike, you shared a lot of things. I'm thinking maybe you have saved the last one, the best one for for last. So, do you have something else for us?
Yeah, the last thing I want to talk about is by far the most important, I believe. We've talked about strategic versus tactical. How strong should I be? How optimistic should I be? Making good team decisions. But to me, the most important thing you can bring as a leader is integrity. And that means standing tall, sticking to the values you've created in when you document your persona in your head or on paper. make sure you include a good dose of integrity so that the decisions you make, the course of action you take, the how you treat other people is done with phenomenal integrity, good moral principles, and uprightness. So, a few guidelines and a few warnings on that topic, and I'll be brief here. But I had a chance to meet Mike Duke. He was a former CEO of Walmart, and he spoke at one of our events, and got a chance to chat with him. But it, he reminded us all that integrity, your personal integrity, is defined at its lowest measured point, and that's how people will remember you. It's not you could do 50 things well, and then you do one thing really wrong. That's how people remember you. And if you ever doubt that, just Google Bill Clinton, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Another reason for being of high integrity, you want to be regarded by others as a person with principle. That will improve your effectiveness as a leader. If people say, I had a boss like this, I'd march into a burning building for that person, because they have integrity, not because they're a successful slime ball. You want
Yeah.
to be able to have people follow you, work hard for you, respect you, be successful in your world because of the way they feel about your values. Again, you set the bar. If your behavior has low integrity, it will say to the entire organization, I guess it's okay to have low integrity. As I say here, if you wear your underwear on the outside of your jeans, everyone's going to think, hey, it's okay to wear my underwear on the outside of my jeans. Well, it's not, right? So you set the bar. There's a book called Conscious Capitalism, by John Mackey and Raj, uh, and it talks about the financial and business rewards associated with being good. It's a little heady, and you got to take it with a grain of salt, because some there are those times doing the rightest thing may neither be best for the company or your career. Um, but it's good to aspire to that. It's good to say, how can I harvest more business success out of doing good things, whether it's putting solar panels on the roof, or giving everybody a turkey at Christmas, or whatever it might be. How can I harvest business goodness from personal and leadership goodness? And the last thing, having gone through a career and rolled into what I'll call semi-retirement, one of the best things about operating with high integrity is you're never going to regret it. You're never going to look back and go, why did I do that? Oh my God. You'll look back and
Yep.
go, yeah, it was a good run. I had a good run here. It turned out well. So anyway, that's my closing guidance, if you will.
Well, I mean, I want a life where I don't have regrets. So yes, yes, I think that's super cool to measure yourself and your success to the level of your integrity. Well, you did leave the best for last, so thanks, Mike, and I'm so happy that we had the time to fit it in here. So awesome. Well, I think that's it for episode 1. I think we are at our closing because we don't want the episode to go too long. So maybe let's do a quick summary of what you shared and what we learned. Oh, wait, before we do that, I heard that you are doing a class. Tell us more about it for folks who like, okay, I want to learn this. I'm ready to learn it.
Sure, sure. Well, this lovely invitation you gave me for this podcast is a sampling of my overall view of moving into leadership. The long version is going to be is called Becoming an Engineering Leader, and I'm conducting that in a 2-day continuing education class. It's going to be 12 hours, two 6-hour days, May 15th and 16th of this year. So it's an online course or in person, can be done either way. The University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee Continuing Education Program, downtown Milwaukee, is where the classroom will be. It provides 1.2 continuing education units. You can go on their website and find it. So if you find this intriguing or valuable or of interest to you, or you'd like a deeper dive, you will be rewarded, I hope, after 2 days of 6 hours a day for 2 days in this particular continuing education class. So I invite you all to take a look at the website, see if it's intriguing, and hope to see you either on the screen or in the classroom.
Yeah, and mention Mike that you found the course through this. Yes, give him the feedback. So yeah, super cool. I'm so happy to support you in helping engineers become leaders, impactful and effective leaders. So yeah, super cool. Well, what do you say that we do a little recap and then a little bit tell people a little bit about what we're gonna do in episode 2?
All right, so episode 2 is often missing tools for the STEM professional. It's going to be a similar 45-minute to an hour episode, and it's going to cover more discrete, a little less philosophical than today was. Today was intentionally higher level, a little more philosophical, but more about the discrete elements of leadership and some things that let me just leave it at this. Things I wish I knew that I didn't know and weren't taught going into management. And although we certainly won't make everybody an expert on each one of those, it will be a nice primer for all those topics that will make you hopefully inspire you to go deeper and look at your own report card and say, boy, yeah, I guess I'm really not an A+ in that category. I got to go find myself some more education. So we'll be talking about leadership tools in the next episode.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, we're gonna go as you showed us more towards the tactical of implementing the leadership.
Yep.
Well, let's kind of do a summary of what we learned today. So we I I'm super excited to say that engineers have the raw material to lead. I'm a big believer in that too, that uh, it's not about can engineers lead? No, it's about when can engineers lead? And then we talked about some of the trade-offs to become a manager versus an individual contributor. And in my point of view, it's valuable to understand these so that you can make a good decision regarding your career, because it's really your career and you decide which way you want to go. And then we also talked about the work that engineers can choose to take on to develop themselves and their leadership persona, as you said it, Mike, using your words here. So who do I want to be as a leader? That's a very important question. And the sooner you ask yourself that, the easier will be your path into leadership. I can promise that. I've seen it, I experienced it myself, and I worked with leaders. As soon as you figure out the answers to that, and you go search for the answers if you don't have them, the more, how to say, the more fun also becomes that whole journey. And then we talked about what it takes to move up the ladder. I think that was also very valuable information. And then you shared a few of the leadership fundamentals with us, closing us out with integrity, but you talked about optimism and resilience. So yeah, we shared a lot today, Mike. And let's say if people got inspired to connect with you, how can they connect with you, Mike?
Sure. My email address is mktacticalleadership@gmail.com. So the letters MK and then all one word, tacticalleadership@gmail.com. You can feel free to get a hold of me and start a conversation or tell me what you liked or didn't like about this podcast or advice for that. I'm always open for new advice. So let me have it.
Yeah,
Uh,
give us some feedback. I'll put it in the notes as well.
Very good.
So let's see. Well, and your book, you already said, is available on Amazon. So again, the book is over here. So let's show it to folks again. Go and find it. If you can't find it, reach out. I'll help you find it. So I want to give you the mic back, Mike, to close us out. What would you like what would you like to lead to close this podcast with?
You know, I ask everybody who took the time to spend an hour with us today to just think about that very first one of my very first slides where I talked about um, don't ever discount the journey ahead or think they've got the whole journey figured out. Be wide open to opportunities that come upon you and things that you had no idea were coming, or situations that you're put in that maybe you didn't expect, but open different doors for you. Sometimes maybe that's a little tough for an engineer who's kind of rigid and lives in a box, but open that viewfinder and be wide open for opportunities that you didn't think about on the day you put on your graduation gown. And I think you'll be rewarded by that.
Yeah, I love that. Well, on that note, thank you very much for being here today, Mike. And I will see you in episode 2.
All right, my pleasure. Thanks, everybody.